Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, international keynote speaker, Sylvie Giusto. Hey, what you drinking? Wow. So right now, you are getting a virtual high five from season 3 guest, Michelle Neverez, who was my instructor, but she's the author of the book Beyond Emotional Intelligence. And she's the leader of the program that's trained so many of my coaching colleagues and I on emotional intelligence. And I can just tell you're getting a virtual high five from her.
Good.
Because you are all over it. Just the idea of the importance of understanding how much more is communicated at the subconscious level, and our gut picks up on it, right? We always have that gut feeling, but we rarely have the confidence to act on that gut feeling. What do you think gets in the way? I've got my suspicions as to what gets in the way of us acting on our gut feeling. You know, we don't want to make mistakes, and we want to be able to justify our decisions to someone else. But what are some of your thoughts as to why we don't act on our gut feeling when our gut is receiving a lot more data than our conscious brain is receiving?
Well, I would disagree. I think we act most of the time on our gut, based on our gut feeling. We just don't like to admit it, or we are not aware of it. We use data, facts, and figures as a reasoning for many of the decisions that we actually made based on our gut feelings. And I also don't think that we can separate it fully. You know, it's always a combination, hopefully, of both, but with a healthy level of self-awareness. And self-awareness is one of the biggest cornerstones of emotional intelligence. You at least can sometimes hold up a stop sign for yourself and say, oh, wait, why did I make that decision this way, right? Or who else would I have to include in case I might be biased and cannot make a decision that is correct based on data, facts, and figures, or maybe it's driven just solely by my own emotions? I think the answer to everything is self-awareness, and that sounds so easy. But most people, if I want to ask you, are you self-aware? Most people say yes, but most people are not self-aware, including ourselves, because we have so much social pressure around us. And especially as leaders, I call it the CEO disease. It's a disease that we all get at one point, even if we are not CEOs. But the higher we climb the ladder, the more we think we are self-aware, but the less we become self-aware, because the more we believe in the things we tell ourselves, and the less input we get from others based on, you know, the hierarchy we are in, or based that people really fear to tell us the truth because it might have impact on their own careers.
Oh my, so important. You know, I had so many conversations at the beginning of season 3 with Jim Dinkins, who's the CEO of the Honey Baked Ham Company, with Dave Peacock, who is now the CEO of Advantage Solutions, former CEO of Anheuser-Busch, Michelle Neverez, I mentioned as well. And they each talked about, and I want to get your take on this based on the work that you do, but they all talked about something that you just mentioned, how they have to work really hard to create an environment where others feel safe to tell them the truth. And they're all nice people. I mean, I consider all of them friends or mentors, but there's something about that CEO title that makes it challenging for people to feel comfortable bringing bad news or telling them the truth. And so they have to work really hard to, you know, double back to the Jim Dinkins episode in particular, because he breaks down that he tries not to answer the question first. He tries to specifically pull people into the conversations. He's doing these specific things in order to make people feel comfortable bringing him information. What are some of the things that you found that either get in the way of people feeling comfortable bringing leadership information or bad news or ideas or questions? And then what are some things that you've recommended or that you've seen folks do to lower some of those barriers?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I agree with you, even if it sounds like such an amazing job title to become the CEO of a company. It is probably one of the most lonesome jobs that you can have. I had the pleasure to work as the chief of staff of our CEO for a very long time. And the reality is that you're constantly surrounded by people with their own agenda. And if they don't have an own agenda, there is this power or this feeling of power in between that makes it really hard to be open and truthful to the CEO. But besides that, I think what all successful leaders that I have met throughout my career have in common is, first of all, they lead by example. If you don't appear, behave, communicate in real world or online the way you expect your followers, your team members to appear, behave, communicate, you're doing something wrong. The second thing is successful leaders appear, behave, and communicate like successful leaders long before they actually become one. If you want to become the CEO of a company, you cannot start appearing, behaving, communicating like a CEO the day you start that job. In fact, probably 20, 30 years beforehand, hopefully you already showed traits and characteristics that were so obvious to others that somebody in your environment thinks, oh, this person one day could be the CEO of a big company, because this is how you find your mentors, your supporters, your campaign team, and take a shortcut to that position. I also think that successful leaders are controlled. While we think that a CEO or a successful leader only should have the big picture in mind, the reality is, and I'm not talking about micromanaging, but they are in control of the way they are perceived, for example, in control of the way they represent themselves, their teams, and their organizations. And that has a lot to do with respect, showing respect to yourself, but also to others. One of the biggest lies I often hear, and you're not going to like that probably because people don't like to hear that. And when it comes to leadership, one of the main success criteria that is often presented is to be totally authentic. And I believe that especially in such a responsible role like a CEO, that authenticity is a lie. Authenticity is a lie because we all play roles. I play a role here at home as a mom of 2 teenagers. And I appear and behave and communicate in a specific way with my teenagers because I'm forming them, I'm preparing them for life. And that is very different than the way I talk to my husband. That is very different than the way I talk to my audiences. That is very different than the play that the role that I play when I try to convince my clients to hire me. And the same is true as a CEO of a company. In your specific role, you can be authentic. I'm very authentic as a mother. I'm very authentic as a wife. I'm very authentic as a speaker. But I could never talk with my husband like I speak with my audiences. Can you imagine that? I would get quite in trouble, and vice versa, right? So I think as a CEO, yes, you are authentic in that role, but that doesn't mean authenticity over all your roles that you play throughout life. And it is very important that you stay authentic in that role, but that you also have the capability to go home and at home to not be a CEO anymore,
Yeah.
and then to be a father or other roles that you play.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm gonna admit, when I first heard that, I had a reaction, because
Yeah.
you keep hearing throughout all of the world, and all this literature and all these leadership gurus, and I consider myself to be on that guru track, that authenticity is important. But I think what I'm hearing you say, though, is that you have to be authentic in the position that you're in, but you've got to be able to turn it off. And I don't like the word compartmentalizing, because I think that that's a fallacy as well. But you can't be the same person everywhere you go. And when I think of authenticity, I actually thought of this line between what you do, what you say, and what you believe. There has to be a through line, because if there is no through line, if you can tell that I'm saying something or I'm doing something that's inconsistent with what I believe, then that's going to have a significant compromise of my relationship with you.
Yeah.
You can't be the CEO in every setting.
Yeah. And I do believe that we all have core values, and that there is a red thread throughout our roles, right? Some of my core values at work are the same ones that I apply at home every single day. But I think the biggest problem with authenticity is that it is misused very often as an excuse to not to care. I don't have to care about how I appear. I don't have to care about what I say. I don't have to care about how I behave, because I'm just truly myself. And I don't think that this is a reality for somebody, for example, like a CEO, even not for myself on stage. I can, when I think about my appearance, my visual appearance, I work always in that ABCDE model: your appearance, your behavior, your communication, your digital footprint. I'm representing myself on stage. I'm representing my host on stage. I have to take into consideration the AV team in the back by what I'm wearing, that their work is not difficult. I want to welcome the audience respectful, no matter in which country that I speak. So I can't be fully authentically myself, as if I wouldn't care. I show respect to the people I interact with, right? And that will impact the way that I appear. That will also impact the way that I behave. And so I think the real problem with authenticity very often is that people think they don't have to care anymore. They can just do whatever they want. And there might be, if you have a long history of success, right, then you have more opportunities. I always say, you know what, Mark Zuckerberg can walk into his company with flip-flops, and you can do that too, as long as you have invented a multi-billion-dollar company in your garage or in your dorm. But trust me, I have seen Mark Zuckerberg more often in a suit and then others in flip-flops or in a hoodie, because whenever Mark Zuckerberg needs money, he thinks a suit is a very good idea. And there are plenty of these examples, right? And the same is true for behavior and communication and how you present yourself online. And as a CEO, it is not just about yourself. You are representing an entire company. And we have so many examples where one misstep of a CEO has such a huge impact on the organization and on every single employee.
Oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. One of the things I talked about with another guest is, people often, they might not call it authenticity in the way that you're talking about it right now, but I think it's connected. But they'll say, I have the freedom to do it. I have the right to do it. And what I said with that guest was, the thing that we're missing in that equation is, yes, you have the freedom to do it. Yes, you have the right to do it, but you also have the responsibility to manage the implications of doing it. And a lot of times people want to have the right, they want to have the freedom, but they don't want to have the responsibility of managing the implications from doing it. And I love the work that you're doing and the way that you're phrasing that. And I can see this being part of this book that will probably be out by the time that this episode airs. Make me feel important. Talk to me a little bit about make me feel important.
Yes.
Why did you feel compelled to write a book entitled Make Me Feel Important?
Well, it is my third book, actually. The first one, The Image of Leadership, was my first book, focused very much on how am I perceived as a leader in an organization and how can I package myself better. Then I dived into Fair Advantage, my second book, where I help leaders to identify their unique selling points. And with my third book now, I realized that throughout writing those two books, it always comes down onto making yourself feel important, showing respect to yourself in everything that you do, and making others feel important. I mean, who doesn't want to feel important, valued, and respected in any situation? No matter if you are a customer and buying a service or a product, or you are a team member in an organization. All you want in the end, very simplified, is that your leader, your boss makes you feel important every single day for the contributions that you bring to work. And so there are books out there who either tackle the one or the other, right? Who either go into self-confidence and self-esteem and making yourself feel important, or go into the other towards, team culture, leadership style, or even customer experiences. And so I wanted to merge those two things to demonstrate the huge value if you first always start with yourself in committing, making yourself important because you are worth it. You are the CEO of your career. It is not human resources. It's not your boss. It's nobody else but you. And so what are you doing to make yourself feel important, valued, and worth investing into in a variety of ways? But also, what are you doing to make others feel important, no matter in which relationship you are with them, might be your team members or might be your customers?
I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of that book, because that sounds like an installment that really does need to be in the world today. So thank you so much for writing it. Now I got to ask you about your invisible board of directors.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are a couple of names on here
Yeah.
that I would expect to hear, or at least they don't surprise me that they're on your board of directors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard some versions of it before. So Barack Obama and George W. Bush. You know what? I have actually seen both those names on a board of directors, and I've got a lot of respect for both of those men, although they sit on opposing sides of the political spectrum. I appreciate the fact that they've got a friendship and
Mm-hmm.
that they can have a friendship,
Right.
although politics might be a little different. So that didn't surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
Albert Einstein. Oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
good to have a genius or two on your board. Steve Jobs. Okay, the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I get you. Stephen Hawking. You don't have just one genius; you got two. I
Mm-hmm.
get you. Ellen DeGeneres.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
she has a very, very clear space in today's culture. I can appreciate that. And then you said your daughter and your son. I appreciate that as well. But the one that I wasn't expecting, and I really want to talk to you about. So I've rushed through all these amazing
Yeah.
people on your board, because you said that also on your board is your mailman or your mailwoman. Talk
Mm-hmm.
to me about how the postal executive has made it onto your invisible board of directors.
So the names that I provided you are all interchangeable, right? But what they all have in common, that I feel as a leader or as an individual, we have a responsibility to surround ourselves with different perspectives to help us identify our blind spots. I have a lot of blind spots. And so have you. And so has every other human being. And there is nothing wrong about that. And it has nothing to do with the fact if you're a good human being or not. But if you don't purposefully surround yourself with people who could help you with those blind spots and see things from a different perspective than you see them, then you have a funnel vision that will not help you throughout your career and life. So very purposefully, I always try to be surrounded by people who are very different than myself. And my mailman or mailwoman or UPS driver or Amazon driver, exchange them with whatever title you want to give them, have a perspective on life that I don't have. They do a job we all got so used to. I mean, mail shows just up in the morning, right? But did we ever think through first of all, the difficulty of that job? Who wants to wake up at 3 a.m, jump into a car, get a box, drive around? No, they are under time pressure. I have no idea because I don't know that role. I just can imagine it is a very difficult job, one that is totally undervalued by many, many people. And so I found it important to have somebody on my board who can help me understand their perspectives when we make big decisions together.
I love the intentionality of making sure that you have perspective from people that you wouldn't necessarily think about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lesson for everyone, I believe. Oh my gosh. So first of all, I'm going to need to drag you into the VIP room because my VIPs are absolutely going to love your additional perspective. And in that room, I'm going to ask you to share a little bit more about how you got into the work that you're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always fascinating to me when I meet people who are starting to move towards mastery of their craft. It's one thing to be interested in something and to learn it because you're interested in it. It's another thing to learn it because that's your career. But when you start getting into mastery, you start thinking of the thing that you're doing as a craft.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you right now, coaching, executive coaching is not a job for me. That is my craft. I am really trying to understand executive motivation and executive inspiration, all the elements that go into helping people become as amazing as God intended them to be. So I want to get your insights on that. But before I bring you into the VIP room, I would just love for you to share first, how can people get a hold of you if they want to get some of this insight directly, either for themselves or for the conferences that they might be leading? And then what's something that you might want to leave for our listeners to help them embrace their own superpower?
So first of all, you find me everywhere on the internet. Type in my name with all the typos that are possible. I hope you still find me because it is very unique and you will end up on my website. On my website, I invite you to do two things. First, there is a free perception audit. It's a 10-minute questionnaire with very uncommon questions you will find. And after the 10 minutes, you will get a personalized report about how the world perceives you. Doesn't mean that it is right or wrong, but you will find out how, based on your appearance, your behavior, your communication, and your digital footprint, what people think of you when they think of you. And then second, sign up for my newsletter or pick some of the free ebooks and free courses. There's a lot of free material on my website. You find me also on social media. I'm very active on Instagram and on LinkedIn. You will have to holler loud if you want to find me on Twitter or Facebook. I'm really there. And if you are interested in my speaking service, either you can find everything on my website or at my wonderful speaking agency, CMI, which is one of the greatest agencies in the world. And I'm very proud that they represent me.
And then what would you want to leave with our listeners? Because we've talked about a number of things, and oh my gosh, I can just tell that we just barely scratched the surface of your depth of experience with these topics that we've talked about. But I really enjoyed where we started when you started talking about finding your superpower and not being afraid of those areas that might make you nervous.
Yes.
Because it's a little different, it's a little unique versus what others might have. What advice would you give to the listeners about that?
So I call those superpowers your fair, like unfair, just fair advantage, the fair advantage that you have in you. And my second book is actually about this topic, 461 pages long. I take you on a journey of self-discovery to find your 15 unique superpowers that create your fair advantage. And maybe in our VIP room, we talk a little bit about those superpowers and what they actually are and how I help you to discover them. But what I want you to walk away with is everything you need to leverage your fair advantage is already inside of you. You just have to uncover it and tell people about it. Your superpowers are powerful, but if you don't know exactly what they are, and if you don't tell people about them, you will miss out on your career.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Again, I just love the work that you're doing, and I love the passion at which you're doing it, because that is going to make a difference for a whole lot of people if it hasn't already. So with that, raise your glass, raise your beverage. I've got a little bit of my ginger left.
Yes.
So I'm going to raise that. And until next time, cheers.
Until next time, cheers and Prost and santé.
Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.